Hi, I'm Barry Doyle. I'm a lawyer in Chicago. Today we're going to be discussing how much is my case worth? In other words, how much can you get in the way of a settlement when you have an on-the-job injury? It's important information for anybody who's had an on-the-job injury. If you can hit like, hit share, this is good information. And if you have people in your network who could benefit from this information, if you hit like, hit share, it'll circulate this information hopefully to people who can really use it. Anyway, so let's get going. How much is my case worth? It's one of the basic questions that people who've been hurt on the job have regarding their workers' compensation case. In other words, like saying, how much should I settle my case for? And to go about answering that question, we'll take a quick step up to maybe a 10,000-foot view and talk about what are the basic benefits you get. For most workers' compensation cases, there are three basic benefits that you get. First one is you get something called temporary total disability payments. It's 2/3 your average weekly wage while you're off work, and it really stops once you go back to work on a full-time basis. The second thing that you get is payment of your medical expenses. And then the last one is a lump sum payment for permanency that's associated with the injury. This is technically known as permanent partial disability. And basically what it comes down to is when people talk about settling their case, how much is their case worth, they're talking about this third benefit, the permanent partial disability. All right, that's how much you settle your case for. And this is what people are talking about when they talk about settling their workers' compensation case. Now, to go about figure out how much is my case worth, you always have to keep in mind that what we're talking about is a settlement. In order for any case to be settled, you have to have an employer or their insurance company who's willing to pay a certain amount, and you have to be willing to accept that. If those two things don't come together, then the case actually has to be tried, and eventually an arbitrator will be left to decide how much the permanent partial disability payment should be. But the vast majority of all workers' compensation cases get settled at some point along the way, whether it's early or it's late. Eventually they do get settled, but how much a case gets settled for ultimately depends upon the ability to come to an agreement as to how much they're willing to offer, how much you're willing to accept. Now, there's a very basic formula for figuring out how much a case is worth. Basically, what the Workers' Compensation Act does is it sets a schedule for every part of the body. And depending on the extent of the permanent loss of use you have of that part of the body, essentially what they do is they take the number of weeks pay, or the number of weeks they're assigned to that part of the body, the extent of the permanency, and then you get that number of weeks pay at the permanency rate. Now, your permanency rate is 60% of your average weekly wage. So that's the first part of this, is that the permanency rate is based on your average weekly wage. I did a video a few weeks ago where I talked about why the average weekly wage is the most important number in your workers' compensation case, and this is why. It affects how much money you get at the end of the case. Now, just to give you an example, the Workers' Compensation Act sets the value of the use of your leg at 215 weeks pay, meaning if you lost complete use of the loss of your leg, you would get 215 weeks pay at the permanency rate, which is 60% of your average weekly wage. Now, if you lost 20% of the use of your leg, then you would get 20% of 215, which just happens to be 43. You would get 43 weeks pay at the permanency rate, which is 60% of your average weekly wage. And that's how it goes for every single part of the body. Now, figuring out that number as to what the percentage is and exactly which part of the body you're assigning the loss of use to. These are some of the really important skills that workers' compensation lawyers have to help you figure these things out. Now, when we're talking about settlement, I kind of going back, it's something that your employer has to be willing to offer, and you have to be willing to accept. And part of what goes into that is, are there issues that are disputed in your case? Are there disputes as to the nature and extent of your injury? Are there disputes as to the cause of your injury? Are there prior injuries? There's a lot that goes into it. So it's something that you can't get an easy answer too. It really requires a lot of skill and a lot of analysis on the part of a workers' compensation lawyer to try and come up with a recommendation for you as to what a reasonable settlement might be. That's the sort of the basis of it. Is it takes a lot of hard work. You have to sit down, make sure that there aren't issues regarding coverage, there aren't issues regarding the nature and extent of the injury, the cause of the injury, whether you're covered at all by workers' compensation, the amount of what your average weekly wage is. Again, it's something that requires some real analysis. So then I promised that we'd have two ways to, that would be the wrong way to try and figure out what a reasonable settlement might be. The first of these is if you call up a lawyer and you talk about what the case is worth over the phone and he gives you a quote. If somebody's going to give you a quote over the phone without doing the actual hard work to go through all the facts of your case, to look at your medical records, to know what's in the insurance company's claim file, whether there's been an IME, what the results of the independent medical exam was, they're really not doing the hard work that's needed to really figure out what your case is worth. And if a lawyer's going to give you a quote over the phone without actually doing all the hard work that's involved in figuring out all of the issues that go into the fair settlement value of the case, one of two things is true. Either they're doing a sales job on you, or they don't know what they're talking about. Neither one of those is good for you. So, if you're calling up a lawyer and they're giving you a quote over the phone, my own recommendation is that you run as fast in the other direction as your legs will carry you. It's not a good sign when somebody's trying to tell you what your case is worth over the phone without doing the real work that's involved. The other way that you end up getting a wrong feeling as to what the fair settlement value of your case might be is if you just start trying to compare it to somebody else that somebody else that you heard about, looking at lawyers' websites and where they're kind of carrying on bragging about all the great results that they've gotten. If you and somebody have the exact same injury, nobody ever really has the exact same injury, but let's assume that for the sake of argument that you do. If you make $100 a week more than them, every week's pay that you get means that your case is worth $60 more. In other words, your permanency rate is higher. Now, that doesn't take into account, other questions like whether there's issues regarding coverage, whether there's issues regarding causation, all those other things. So, if you're looking at other people, things that you've heard about, it's not a reliable guide. The only real way to figure out what the fair settlement value of a case is, in other words, what a skilled lawyer would recommend to you, is to actually have the lawyer do the hard work that's involved in figuring out what a fair settlement value might be. So those are the two basic ways that you can get it wrong. You can get a quote over the phone from a lawyer who either doesn't know what they're talking about or is doing a sales job on you, or you can just try to compare with other people that you might know. I hope this has been helpful. If it's been valuable to you, hit like, hit share. This is good information. By doing that, you'll be circulating the information to other people who might benefit from it. If you have other questions, you can contact our office. Our phone number is 312-263-1080, or you can go to our website, www.rightsofinjuredtruckers.com. Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.